A major component to President Biden's ambitious day one moves, some of the most progressive immigration reform this country has seen in a very long time. Part of that includes the new president calling for an end to the Muslim ban, protections for DACA recipients, and a 100-day pause on some deportations. He's already facing opposition. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton suing the Biden administration for the deportation freeze. Biden is also expected in the coming days to announce his plans for a task force to help reunite the over 600 migrant children still separated from their parents because of Trump's family separation policy. This, as reporting from NBC's Jacob Soboroff and Julia Ainsley, reveals that Biden's acting attorney general has signed off on a 2017 decision to remove a prosecutor who objected to family separations. With me now, NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff. He's also the author of the New York Times bestseller, Separated: Inside an American Tragedy. Jacob, first, I want to get into your new reporting with Julia. Tell us more about the timing of this reassignment. What does this say about the overall internal hesitations about separating families under the Trump administration?
At the very beginning of all of this, in 2017, late 2017, there was a line prosecutor in the El Paso sector who was detailed down there, Alicia, who had concerns about separations. He said he was disturbed by what he was seeing, and this was floated up through Trump appointees to Monty Wilkinson, who is today the acting attorney general. He was in a post in the executive office of the Department of Justice, U.S. attorneys, and ultimately this line prosecutor was reassigned. We're not suggesting, nobody's suggesting, I don't think, that the acting attorney general for the president was a mastermind of the policy, but he very well may know some key details about how this policy, and particularly the El Paso pilot program, was put into place in the first place. And it also raises questions, quite frankly, about what the transition knew about this. It was publicly reported by The Guardian in late 2017. So I think that there are more questions than answers when it comes to the reunification task force. Perhaps the acting attorney general may very well play a role there because of what he knows. But what we're getting from the White House and from the Department of Justice is really this was an administrative function. And frankly, that does not tell the full picture, which is why we believe that this is important.
When you look back at immigration policy, the fights that there have been over immigration policy in the last few administrations, there was a push on the part of both the Bush administration and the Obama administration to do some type of reform work, but it did not come this early in their term. What does that signal to you, and what are advocates saying about Biden's efforts?
Well, I think that there's a cautious optimism, right? Because certainly if you talk to activists and advocates for immigrants in this country, there were not a lot of fans of the Obama era, certainly, whether it was the deportations or family detention or limited amounts of family separation, quite frankly, early on. You can just look at the report from LIRS and KIND and the Women's Refugee Commission at the very beginning of the Trump administration to see the details of that. So I think the pathway to citizenship obviously has a lot of people feeling good. Perhaps new enforcement priorities that we saw even in the executive actions have people cautiously optimistic. The actions around the border wall, where I was earlier in the week, I think have people optimistic. But really, these are very early days. Yeah. And ultimately, people have been through a lot when it comes to immigration in this nation. It is a very broken system that has been very broken for a long time. And only time will tell, quite frankly.
Right. Jacob, we've been talking a lot about the undoing, about dismantling some of the Trump-era policies, and then there is the doing, the proactive policies of the Biden administration. When you take a step back, what is the current state that we find our immigration system in today?
I think it's a system that is very deeply broken and has hurt a lot of people over the course of decades. It's a system that is based in deterrence, based in scaring people away from coming to this country, from penalizing them, for punishing them, and quite frankly, when it comes to the border, making people take dangerous and deadly routes to get here. We saw the ultimate extension of that, probably the worst possible variation of it in the Trump administration, where they literally tortured, in the words of Physicians for Human Rights, abused children, in the words of the American Academy of Pediatrics, with this family separation policy. That is an order of magnitude greater than we had ever seen before. But the system itself still remains in place. The reason that Donald Trump was able to separate families like this is because the system was there during Barack Obama, and he deported more people than anyone before. It was there during George W. Bush when he exponentially expanded the size of the Department of Homeland Security, which he created, and the Border Patrol, which obviously he didn't create. And then Bill Clinton, who put the first wave of modern infrastructure, walls, etc., up, which put people into these dangerous and deadly routes. So it's sort of, I mean, you really have to go back that far, decades, to start to undo some of this stuff to get to a place where advocates want this immigration system to be today.
Let's talk about where we find the fight today. I mean, he's going to need to find Republican support for this legislation. What is the state of play? Where does he look for that support?
Well, I thought, Alicia, you posed the right question earlier in your broadcast. What's the future of the Republican Party? Is it a party that wants to include, in my state, California, a so-called majority-minority state? I live in Los Angeles, a city where 50% of the residents here are Latinx residents, where they want to acknowledge that that is the reality in this nation? Or is it a Republican Party that refuses to acknowledge that? And I think that that is going to be the decision that the Republican Party has to make. And obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. Who knows ultimately what they are going to do?
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.